Say, you'd have thought I'd sold him a second, or asked him to work on Yom Kippur. He hands me the cold-boiled stare and yaps, "I don't know, friend. I'll see." And he ducks behind the rim of a jig they keep track of the rooms on. Well, I guess he called up the Credit Association and American Security League to see if I was all right. He certainly took long enough. Or maybe he just went to sleep. But finally he comes out and looks at me like it hurts him, and croaks, "I think I can let you have a room and bath." "Well, that's awful nice of you. Sorry to trouble you. How much you'll set me back?" I says, real sweet. "It'll cost you $7 a day, friend," he says. Well, it was late, and anyway, it went down on my expense account. Gosh, if I'd been paying it instead of the firm, I'd be trampling the streets all night before I'd be able to let a hick tavern slick me 7, 8 big round dollars, believe me. So I let it go at that. Well, the clerk wakes a nice young bellhop, fine lad, not a day over 79 years old. Fought at the Battle of Gettysburg and doesn't know it's over yet. Thought I was one of the Confederates, I guess, from the way he looked at me. And Rip Van Winkle took me up to something. I found out afterwards they called it a room. But first I thought there'd been some mistake. I thought they were putting me in the Salvation Army collection box at 7 per each and every diem. Gosh. Yeah, I heard of the Rippleton was pretty cheesy. Now, when I went to Chicago, I always stayed at the Blackstone or LaSalle, first-class places. Say, any of you fellows ever stay at the Birchdale at Terre Haute? How is it? Oh, the Birchdale, first-class hotel. 12 minutes of conference on the state of hotels in South Bend, Flint, Dayton, Tulsa, Wichita, Fort Worth, Winona, Erie, Fargo, and Moose Jaw. "Speaking about prices," the man in the velour hat observed, fingering the elk tooth on his heavy watch chain, "I'd like to know where they get this stuff about clothes coming down. Now you take this suit I got on." He pinched a trouser leg. 4 years ago, paid $42.50 for it, and it was real sure enough value. Well, here the other day I went into a store back home and asked to see a suit, and the fellow yanks out some hand-me-downs that, honest, I wouldn't put on a hired man. Just out of curiosity, I asked him, "What you charging for that junk?" "Junk?" he says. "What do you mean, junk? That's a swell piece of goods, all wool." "Like hell! It was nice vegetable wool, right off the old plantation." "It's all wool," says, "and we get 67.90 for it." "Oh, you do you?" I says. "Not from me, you don't." I says. I walks right out on him. You bet. I says to the wife, "Well," I said, "as long as your strength holds out and you can go on putting a few more patches on Papa's pants, we'll just pass up buying clothes." "That's right, brother. And just look at collars, for instance." "Hey, wait!" Fat Man protested. "What's the matter with collars? I'm selling collars. Do you realize the cost of labor on a collar is 207% above—" They voted that if their old friend the Fat Man sold collars, then the price of collars was exactly what it should be. But all other clothing was tragically too expensive. They admired and loved one another now. They went profoundly into the science of business and indicated that the purpose of manufacturing a plow or a brick was so that it might be sold. To them the romantic hero was no longer the knight, the wandering poet, the cowpuncher, the aviator, nor the brave young district attorney, but the great sales manager, who had an analysis of merchandising problems on his glass-topped desk, whose title of nobility was Go-Getter, and who devoted himself and all his young samurai to the cosmic purpose of selling, not of selling anything in particular, for to be anybody in particular, but pure selling. The shop talk roused Paul Riesling. Though he was a player of violins and an interestingly unhappy husband, he was also a very able salesman of tar roofing. He listened to the Fat Man's remarks on the value of house organs and bulletins as a method of jabbing up the boys on the road, and he himself offered one or two excellent thoughts on the use of 2-cent stamps on circulars. Then he committed an offense against the holy law of the clan of good fellows. He became highbrow. They were entering a city. On the outskirts they passed a steel mill which flared in scarlet and orange flame that licked at the cadaverous stacks, at the iron-sheathed walls and sullen converters. "Why, Lord, look at that! Beautiful," said Paul. You bet it's beautiful, friend. That's the Shelling-Horton steel plant. And they tell me old John Shelling made a good 3 million bones out of munitions during the war." The man with the velour hat said reverently, "I didn't mean it. I mean it's lovely the way the light pulls that picturesque yard, all littered with junk, right out of the darkness," said Paul. They stared at him, while Babbitt crowed, "Paul, there has certainly got to one of the great little eye for picturesque places and quaint sights and all that stuff. Been an author or something if he hadn't gone into the roofing line." Paul looked annoyed. Babbitt sometimes wondered if Paul appreciated his loyal boosting. The man in the velour hat grunted, "Well, personally, I think Shelling-Horton kept their works awfully dirty, bum routing. But I don't suppose there's any law against calling 'em picturesque, if it gets you that way." Paul sulkily returned to his newspaper, and the conversation logically moved on to trains. "What time we get into Pittsburgh?" asked Babbitt. "Pittsburgh? I think we get in no, that was last year's schedule. Wait a minute. Let's see. Got a timetable right here. Wonder if we're on time." "Yeah, sure, we must be about on time." "No, we aren't. We're 7 minutes late. Last station." "We were? Straight? My gosh, I thought we were right on time." "No, we're about 7 minutes late." "Yep, that's right. 7 minutes late." The porter entered, a negro in white jacket with brass buttons. "How late are we, George?" growled the fat man. "'Deed, I don't know, sir. I think about on time," said the porter, folding towels and deftly tossing them up on the rack above the washbowls. The council stared at him gloomily, and when he was gone they wailed, "I don't know what's come over these niggers nowadays. They never give you a civil answer." "That's a fact. They're getting so they don't have a single bit of respect for you. The old-fashioned coon was a fine old cuss. He knew his place. But these young dingies don't want to be porters or cotton pickers. Oh, no. They got to be lawyers, professors, and Lord knows what all. I tell you, it's becoming a pretty serious problem. We ought to get together and show the black man, yes, and the yellow man his place. Now, I haven't got one particle of race prejudice. I'm the first one to be glad when a nigger succeeds, so long as he stays where he belongs and doesn't try to usurp the rightful authority and business ability of the white man. That's and another thing we got to do," said the man with the velour hat, whose name was Koplinski, "is to keep those damn foreigners out of the country. Thank the Lord they're putting a limit on immigration. Those Dagoes and Hunkies have got a lot to learn. This is a white man's country, and they ain't wanted here. When we've assimilated the foreigners we got here now and learned 'em the principles of Americanism and turned 'em into regular folks, well, maybe we'll let in a few more." "You bet that's a fact," they observed, and passed on to lighter topics. They rapidly reviewed motor car prices, tire mileage, oil stocks, fishing, and the prospects for the wheat crop in Dakota. But the fat man was impatient at this waste of time. He was a veteran traveler and free of illusions. Already he had asserted that he was an old he-one. He leaned forward, gathered in all their attention by his expression of sly humor, and grumbled, "Oh, hell, boys, let's cut out the formality and get down to the stories." They became very lively and intimate. Paul and the boy vanished. The others slid forward on the long seat, unbuttoned their vests, thrust their feet up on the chairs, pulled the stately brass cuspidors nearer, and ran the green window-shade down on its little trolley to shut them from the uncomfortable strangeness of night. After each bark of laughter they cried, "Hey, did you ever hear the one about—" Babbitt was expansive and virile. When the train stopped at an important station the four men walked up and down the cement platform, under the vast smoky train-shed roof, like a stormy sky under the elevated footways, beside crates of ducks and sides of beef, in the mystery of an unknown city. They strolled abreast, old friends and well content. At the long-drawn "All aboard!" like a mountain call at dusk, they hastened back into the smoking compartment, and, till 2 in the morning, continued to droll tales, their eyes damp with cigar smoke and laughter. When they parted they shook hands and chuckled, "Well, sir, it's been a great session. Sorry to bust it up. Mighty glad to meet you." Babbitt lay awake in the close, hot tomb of his Pullman berth, shaking with remembrance of the fat man's limerick about the lady who wished to be wild. He raised the shade.